Welcome. So many people have been wondering, and I get these questions a lot in readings and on lives, and I've been channeling for almost 10 years. So I wanted to give my perspective on fate and free will. I will say my views on this have changed over time, and I think my views have changed because I've adapted to the times and because things are changing in the collective. And so back several years back, I noticed that there was a lot more fate going on. And in the last year, I have noticed that while there are absolutely certain times where I can see, like, hey, here's where the dominant energy sits. So if this, then that, in certain people's readings and stuff, it's not happening as much. And I've seen other channelers and mediums and psychics saying the same thing. One girl was like, I can't pick anything up for 2025 and after. And I was like, that's really interesting because I'm getting general energy themes and larger things that are coming, in terms of like things that will roll out over time. And I put a lot of that in the 2025 energy guide. But in terms of specific events, I'm really not getting as much. It feels to me how it felt before the pandemic. So, and I don't mean that way, that in a scary way, because for me, it feels still relatively still and peaceful. I think often for me, that's because I call in my guides and they wrap me up in a little bubble. And it's usually because I tend to carry a lot of sensitivity. So they do that to help me be able to like maintain my energy in everyday life. But which I will be teaching that as well in my groups. And I already have some cool channeling, classes and mini lessons and stuff like that in the Channeling and Change Makers group if you want to join us. So we're back to our topic. I know that a lot of people are wondering about like a lot of the psychic predictions that come out about like larger collective events, and then psychic predictions and things like that. Like people ask me all the time, what's going to happen with this job? And like, am I going to get offered this? What's going to happen with this interview? What's going to happen with this guy I'm seeing? Like, what's going to happen in my next year ahead? My guides, like, I feel like for me, again, over the years, I've noticed them like they're not giving as many like real specific, here's exactly what's going to happen, for the key thing that we are going through an evolutionary process. So our free will is going to be paramount, and we're going to be coming out of this need to be able to predict. Now, will predictions still happen? Absolutely. And when they do happen, it's because that's where we see the dominant energy going. But I'm really like, if you've ever watched my lives or if you've ever done a reading with me privately, you know that one thing I say consistently is, well, here's where the energy sits right now. And it's always like a percentage, like 80% yes, 20% no, or 70-30 or whatever. Like there's been plenty of times where I've told people, honestly, there's so much free will at play. It's like 50-50. And sometimes I'll tell people like when it's really leaning toward a no or something like that. And so I always say one of the better things you can do is say, well, what can I do to reach a certain outcome or to try and shift the energy? And we have to remember, you're not the only factor. I'm not the only factor. Other people involved aren't the only factors. There could be so many outside factors that influence things because there are billions of people in the world, and there are so many things going on in terms of global events and weather events and things that are out of your control as well. So you need to remember that even if a prediction sits at a pretty solid point, things can still shift and change. And that's how free will works. I know that we don't like it. A lot of times people would rather like leave it up to some invisible force, and that's just not how it is. The other thing my guides want to impress upon you, and I have Eric here, my friend from the other side, who loves to teach about this. One thing he keeps saying too is like, we want you to understand that with collective events unfolding, yes, there are dominant energy currents and people can read them and can see them. And now how things unfold and the time in which they take to unfold can vary, that can change. And with certain things, and really anything, we don't always know everything that's going on behind the scenes. Often us as psychics, if we're not meant to know too much about a situation, we could try as hard as we can to read it, and we won't be able to pick up the details about it because we're being protected from knowing too much, or you're being protected from knowing too much. And believe it or not, you can actually know too much about something. I have seen people actually get in physical, like, in situations where they could be physically harmed from having certain pieces of information and acting on it. So there is something about ethical intuition that's involved with being a psychic or a medium. So in terms of that as well, in terms of free will and fate, we can do certain things to work with the energy, but we're not in control of everything. So that's why sometimes I'll say, hey, let's hold the vision for this. And because like, especially really recently, I was like, I can feel the energy shifting and we need to hold the vision. But it's not always like hold the vision for this one specific outcome, though you can try that. And I certainly see people do things like that. And I think there are ways to work with energy, but we want to be really mindful about karma and cause and effect, and moving out of me, and this is what I want into we. Now, part of this requires that we step into a higher energy of, hey, show me what's best and highest for myself and all. Because often when we're asking for a specific outcome, and we're thinking like it's got to be fated or I've got to make it happen, whatever it is, we're really like imposing force on it. And we're thinking from a me. And that's a fear-based manifesting. We don't want to do that. It's a very low energy and it's going to always create like a negative karmic effect. Rather, we would want to ask, hey, where do I actually need to be focused? What is actually best and highest for myself and all? You will find that your energy pops up here instead of staying down here, feeling like you're underwater. You're going to feel like you're sitting above the water, paddling, going with the flow, going with the momentum, going with the energy, and seeing the opportunities out ahead. That's what will help you sit like up on top of things. Now, it's not about avoiding your feelings. Actually, you want to really be trusting your inner pulls and nudges and intuitions. But it will help you move out of that fear mode and start to get into more of a co-creative energy, so that, because one of the things we want to do is be able to sit with the opportunity that's at hand so that we are creators, we're conscious creators, rather than feeling like we are getting trapped and stuck by the fear or the chaos around certain events in our personal lives or in a collective or a larger, US or global level, etc. And so it's important to remember that we are, not everything is fated, and really like very few things are fated. And when we talk about larger blueprints or people talk about like contracts, soul contracts and stuff. I don't like to use the word contracts. I feel like it's really, it makes people think it's too binding. But it's really more like, that's the type of stuff where it's like, hey, your blueprint might have had you coming here to learn about unconditional love. And so your free will may give you, and the collective free will may give you a lot of opportunities to experience conditional love and unconditional love, right? You may play the role of both someone loving very conditionally and very controlling type of situation where you were playing that person, and you might have the opportunity to learn to be the opposite, right? So it's less about specific events. It's more about specific things that your soul wanted to experience, learn, and integrate in this lifetime. And we can all access that. So when people ask about purpose, you can access those lessons. You can find them. You don't have to always hire someone to, like a psychic or medium. And that's why I started this group, because I think we're more powerful when we're learning rather than always just getting readings. Of course, if you would like one, I'm here for it. But being able to access your higher awareness and access answers for yourself will have you feeling much more sovereign and secure and solid. And the irony of that is that you're going to feel better going out there and being connected to other people because you feel really solid in yourself. So like you're like, it's like the know thyself type of thing. So keep that in mind. And just again, with these larger collective events like election predictions and stuff, the energy sat where it was. The momentum was going where it was. I know in my gut, a lot of readers picked it up accurately. We have to remember there's so much behind the scenes that we are not privy to, and that things unfold, like sometimes they unfold differently than what we originally pick up, because free will has changed things since we made that prediction or since we picked things up. I feel like, again, people really need to understand that and have compassion for that. And just, I think this is a big lesson for the collective also, to step into more of their personal power. So when we see the energy moving toward a certain thing, and that's the thing we want, don't be too passive. When it's moving towards something we don't want, don't be too passive. And so we're kind of seeing the repercussions of that. I do know the spiritual awakening is happening no matter what happens, and that's the big event that is happening that we're here for. So I'll leave this here. I hope this is helpful. Feel free to ask questions.